The battle for J.T Tuimoloau has taken yet another interesting turn because we thought JTT would be in Tuscaloosa from now through the weekend, but we have now learned that that visit has been cancelled. And this is a major development for the four remaining institutions, and we have got to break it all down. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from y'all. Hop down to the comments and give me a Y for yes or an N for no. And with Ohio State long having been considered the favorite in the battle for JTT, do you believe with Alabama out the race that the Buckeyes land the talented prospect out the class of 21? And let me know what you're thinking there. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification because I do constant college football content and you don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoy that content, be sure to like, comment down below. Those interactions are massive to content creators such as myself. But with all of that being said, we have got to break down this battle and this news. And let's start with the Alabama Crimson Tide, the team that we thought JTT would be on campus for through the weekend. And this is a hit to the Crimson Tide. It is a bit of a disappointment. The Crimson Tide staff, namely Nick Saban, I thought did a great job securing the last visit in the JTT tour through that last weekend of June. You know, with Ohio State leading the race, Alabama had done such a good job getting back into it in such a serious nature that when Alabama was able to secure the last visit on JTT's tour, many people thought that that could be a deciding factor in the battle. Ultimately, that visit won't occur, and that's why the Crimson Tide staff have got to be a bit disappointed that they aren't going to be even getting the opportunity to host JTT on this tour. This is a uniquely talented prospect, an individual that looks to come in and contribute wherever he goes year one. He is that talented, but let's not make any mistake about this. At the end of the day, the Alabama Crimson Tide still signed the #1 recruiting class in the cycle for 21, and not only that, it was the #1 recruiting class in the modern era of recruiting. That's how good it was. I mean, this is a historic class that the Crimson Tide signed, so though that they have to be disappointed that they aren't even getting the opportunity to host JTT, the Tide staff will be still sleeping easy at night, knowing that they signed not only the #1 class last cycle, but the #1 class in the history of recruiting. But now let's look at this for the remaining four teams because now they are squarely in the focus, and those teams being the USC Trojans, the Oregon Ducks, the Washington Huskies, and the Ohio State Buckeyes. And we'll start with Washington, the home team. And we've heard JTT has been on campus there watching practices through the spring. And I've always been very interested with Washington in this battle because they had PK, their defensive coordinator, leave, and for Washington to still be as squarely in this battle as they are is just a testament to what Lake looks to get done there, and I think to what Washington has been able to accomplish over the last few years. I understand that they haven't been a national championship program, but Washington has been a very solid program in college football, and they look to continue that with Lake. I've always wondered, though, where they would be in this battle had PK remained at Washington. That's always going to be a question I have. PK going to Texas, he utilizes the jack linebacker position very, very interestingly, and I was always very interested to see what he could do with a JTT, where he would put him, what that system would look like, but nonetheless, I think Washington has to feel good that they are one of the remaining four, and they have to feel good that they have gotten JTT on campus for some of the spring practices, and that he liked what he saw. He said that it was very organized, and he was very high on Washington. The USC Trojans have been recruiting as well as any team in the nation right now. I mean, when you look at how they ended last class, signing Corey Foreman and then Rayshawn Davis, they would love nothing more than to add JTT in. They have got a lot of coaches on the staff that have done a very good job in recruiting JTT and establishing very good relationships. And the USC Trojans recruiting heat isn't just relegated to last year's class. In fact, if we look at this year's recruiting class for USC, they only have 2 5-stars so far. The #2 corner in the nation, Damani Jackson, as well as Michael Williams, and they don't look to be slowing down. In fact, if you look at the visitors that they've had and then hear how those visitors have talked about their experience at USC, they're flying high right now with multiple prospects, and because of that, you'd have to imagine JTT enjoyed his time at USC, especially with the coaches that have been coming after him. The Oregon Ducks, like USC, have been recruiting at such a high level during Mario Cristobal's tenure there. I mean, when you look at what they've done defensively recruiting, when you have Thibodeau, and then you follow that up with 2 inside linebackers that every institution in the nation wanted, in Noah Sewell and Justin Flo, both of those guys are pegged for massive years in 21, if I had to guess. But Thibodeau is an interesting guy because you've seen him just flourish at Oregon, and that right there has got to be a really eye-opening experience for JTT, knowing that he can go to Oregon and continue what Thibodeau is doing, what the Mario Cristobal recruiting is doing, recruiting defensive guys that are very disruptive. The Oregon Ducks are an interesting team to watch. Cristobal has them on the precipice of being that team in the pack that you can rely on, but with USC coming back, with Washington trying to maintain some sort of footing within the Pac-12 is in a really interesting position because some team needs to take that over, and if any team in the Pac-12 can keep JTT, they are going to love their chances of them being the team to be able to cement themselves as that number one team in the pack, because the Pac-12 needs that. Not only does the Pac-12 need that, college football needs for the Pac-12 to be good. It only makes the sport better as a whole. A team like Oregon, USC, or Washington would be awesome for them to be able to get back into that place where they are that powerhouse and a consistent powerhouse. All three institutions are recruiting very well, namely Oregon and USC recruiting at such a high level. But the last institution we need to talk about, the Ohio State Buckeyes, the team that we have thought to be the long-time favorite for JTT. And Larry Johnson is a hell of a recruiter. I mean, this guy can recruit up there with the best of them. It's no surprise that anytime you hear a prospect saying they have a great relationship with Larry Johnson, that's just kind of what he does. The Ohio State Buckeyes rolled out all the stops for JTT. And though Oregon was the last visit, Ohio State has to also feel good that Alabama is now out of this race because not too long ago, JTT was on campus for them. And one of the interesting things about the Ohio State Buckeyes in the entirety of this race is that JTT was always so high on them without ever having visited. So I was really curious to how the visit to Ohio State would go, because that could be such a big factor for Ohio State. If he went there and didn't enjoy his time, it could completely change the way he evaluates the Ohio State Buckeyes. But from all reports and from everything I know, he enjoyed his time there very much. The Ohio State coaching staff rolled out all the stops, meeting him at the airport. That right there was something that, was a very telling thing. JTT saying that family is very big to him. So the Ohio State Buckeyes doing all they could to prove that this is a family environment. And with them being the favorites, with them for at least the entirety of the recruiting cycle up until this point, with Ohio State being the favorites, with them rolling out all the stops and the timing of this, you'd have to like Ohio State's chances. But Oregon, it was the last institution he visited. So the Oregon Ducks are another institution that logically could look at this and say, well, he just came from Oregon, he just got home from his visit at the Oregon Ducks, and now he cancels his trip to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Maybe we're in a great position, and I absolutely think you are. Remember, like I said, Oregon, USC has been recruiting at such a high level with defensive guys. A lot of institutions have been recruiting well, but Oregon and USC are institutions that when you get guys to go visit out there, you always hear positive reviews. But at the end of the day, the Ohio State Buckeyes have got to feel great that the Alabama Crimson Tide are not in this visitation battle anymore, because JTT has long been considering Ohio State a favorite to him, and that was before he even visited. Now he got to visit. He got to see Ryan Day and company pull out all the stops and further a relationship with Larry Johnson, a absolutely gold recruiter. I'm interested to hear what y'all think. Hop down to the comments, let me know, because this right here is interesting given the time. He's just come from Oregon on a visit, and before that he was at Ohio State. So logic would dictate that it's one of those two teams look to be in a great position, but I actually think all four of these teams have something going for them, whether that be recruiting being very hot on the trail right now of multiple prospects in a USC, Oregon being the last school he went to before canceling the visit to Alabama, Ohio State being the longtime favorite, being the school he went to before Oregon to go ahead and plant that seed, all the stops Ohio State rolled out, and then Washington being the hometown team that he's always said he had a soft spot for. With PK leaving, they're still in this top four, and he really liked what he saw at the practices. All four of these teams have redeeming qualities to JTT, and I cannot wait to see where he picks. But hop down in the comments and let me know where you think that the talented prospect out the class of 21 will go. That's it. See ya.